Hey Josh, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks,
So
it's great to be here.
For people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what you've done in the past.
So I joined Greylock about a year ago as an investor looking for kind of the next great companies that we like to get involved in. And Greylock has been involved in companies like Facebook and LinkedIn and Pandora and Airbnb. So kind of these really big, iconic consumer companies. Before I joined Greylock, I've spent the last 15 years building a lot of products and kind of really working, hands deep, both as an engineer and as a product manager on companies like Real Player, LinkedIn, Zazzle, Facebook. Facebook Connect was a product I worked very closely on, and then Twitter. And I've just had a lot of fun kind of thinking about these products from the very early days and how they could really scale and how we could get these products in the hands of millions and millions of users. And by the luck of a lot of the stuff I've been able to work on and the people that I've been able to work with, I think Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter have really realized some of the dreams of when I joined those companies.
How was it like working at those places? Let's talk about each one, like Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn, Zazzle. How was it like working there?
They were all at pretty different stages, and it was fascinating. I joined LinkedIn when it was 15 people, and Reid Hoffman had this idea that if we connect all professionals in the world, we'll be able to create new opportunities for them, professional opportunities, business opportunities, sales opportunities, because instead of needing to find out who somebody knew to go through everybody's Rolodex to find a connection, you'd all of a sudden just be able to use this search engine, this network, to find those access points immediately and then still be able to use your relationships in order to access them. At the early days, we had this really hard problem where nobody would want to sign up for it. They were like, I don't want to put my resume online.
Right.
I don't know that I want to join this network that makes it look like I'm looking for a job, because in the past, the only reason that you'd ever have your work history online was if you were applying to Monster or Career Builder to look for a job. But Reid really had this vision that said, once the resumes are online or the professional profiles are online, the world will look very different. And so we had to spend a lot of time at the company really working through how do you tweak the product on a daily basis and to engage more people, to invite more people to the network, to understand the value on the PR and marketing side. How do you make sure that people understand this isn't just a job site? One of the key things we did when we launched our jobs product wasn't just to try to launch a big business around job listings and job recruitment, but to show job listings and job recruitment were a subcomponent of the website. There were many more things you could do with your professional network. So lots of crazy challenges in the early days.
And that was at LinkedIn?
That was at LinkedIn.
So LinkedIn came before Facebook and Twitter?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, I was employee 15. Then I left LinkedIn for Zazzle. I joined again when it was about 20 people, and it was this vision. If you don't know what Zazzle is, it's an on-demand marketplace for products. You can design shirts and posters and mugs and mouse pads and iPhone cases with any image that you have, and you can get the product made to order. Zazzle makes it within 24 hours and ships it out. And the idea is anybody who then is a designer can put a storefront up just with their artwork, and anyone can come buy any of those products without even having to have made inventory or purchases in the past, and then you make money for a royalty off of your own artwork. And when I joined, it was kind of the future of e-commerce. Imagine every store, instead of just having the 50 things or the 500 items that they have in the store right now, you take any content on any product and customize it on, like for shirts, any one of the 30 or 40 shirt styles. And when I joined Zazzle again, it was 20 people, and it had this dream, and it had this challenge of how do we create a marketplace that makes it work? How do we acquire more users using both SEO and advertising and social tools? How do we get our sellers more empowered to spread it through their networks? And so we spent all of our time iterating on the product to make the experience better, to make these virtual products feel more real before you made a purchase, until it really got working. And now they're growing really, really fast as a company.
Yeah, I believe we've used them at Treehouse.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. We got a puzzle made, right?
Very cool.
So what next? What happened after Zazzle?
Yeah, so I'd been at Zazzle for a couple years and personally was working really hard, almost too hard, and kind of straining my family relationships, and which I think is, I've kind of learned a lot about how to balance that. And I thought, I've had this great run. I think Zazzle's going to be a great company, but I want to go take on another challenge in my career. And a bunch of my friends had recently joined Facebook and were encouraging me to come work with them there. And when I went to meet Facebook, this was early 2008, it had this really interesting phenomenon, which is the world had kind of heard of Facebook and had thought it might be interesting. It was up to maybe 70 million users. By that point, there was this platform that you could build these applications and games on that were spreading and were really, really spammy. But it still wasn't clear if Facebook was this fundamental thing in the world that people were going to use every day and rely on and connect everybody, and that developers were going to rely on as a core way to really build their applications. And I thought, getting to work on that problem to figure out if we could make this platform really fundamental for every website and application would be a really great problem to go solve. And so when I joined them, we worked on the platform team, and really a lot of what we did was work with all the developers and what they were building and connected that back with the product and engineering team that were trying to iterate on Facebook's product and platform to make sure that we were serving users better and we were enabling developers to serve users better. Through one of these initiatives, we realized that a lot of these developers were building within Facebook, and these things felt a little bit spammy and a little bit messy. And we really wanted to step back to what are the core principles? What do you, as a developer and a user, really want from these other applications? It was you want to be able to sign in without having to create a new account. Because once you're on Facebook and if your profile, you don't need to recreate all this information and tell it your email address and how old you are and all these other things. You want to be able to find your friends without having to go and invite all your friends to a new game. If your friends are already using this thing, you should just connect with them immediately. You want to share what you're doing back with your friends. We realized these core principles of identity, friends in the feed, and sharing really made these core principles that will apply to any website or any application. And we started looking outside Facebook and said, how do we get websites like CNN or Amazon or Yelp to integrate these same principles? And so we started a program called Facebook Connect that I ended up leading the launch for, that we decided to go work with lots of major third-party developers for how we can actually get them thinking about this identity and login, friends and social graph and social features and sharing, which I share back to Facebook, but that also brings traffic back to my site, really get that to become a real mainstream thing. And I think we found a lot of early partners who were interested to go deep and really try to make those things work. I think we had a lot of successes. Huffington Post is a social news site, or is a news site that's now known as a social news site because it really embraced Facebook and built a lot of these key integrations. That was a really great partner to really prototype a lot of these things that now seem just commonplace. In the way, I mean, how many websites or applications you go to that don't have a Facebook button, and you're like, now you're missing it. But we had to figure out, when we launched that program, like nobody had it. We had to work through all the interesting things to get the ball rolling.
And then what happened after Facebook? Why did to move on to the next challenge?
Yeah, so I think I have a little bit of ADD in my career where I've loved getting involved with these things and getting them started and getting them to start working. And once I feel like something's really working, my sort of radar goes off and kind of like, okay, what's the next challenge that I can go tackle? And one of the things that I've loved doing in my career is really what I call being in product management, which is really being very close with a product development and an engineering team, building great new features, and sort of in the day-to-day cycle of doing that. And at Facebook, I found my role was a little bit more working with this marketplace of developers, but not really my own core products I was iterating on a daily basis. And so I'd gotten to know the folks at Twitter at that time, and I thought it was this really phenomenon. And I found myself using this product more and more every day and said, I'm really happy at Facebook, but if I could ever go work on one other product, it would be Twitter. Because I think I can see why I want to use it every day and many times a day. I can see why I think hundreds of millions of people around the world should want to use it too. And so I got to know that team over 2009, and by fall of 2009, got an opportunity to go join them. And at Twitter, we had this fascinating problem. Tons of people had heard of Twitter and had heard Twitter exist, and the media is talking about it, and celebrities are talking about it, and people are tweeting, but they didn't really know why it would be meaningful to them. And so they asked me to start up a small team there. We called it onboarding, and now it's called user growth, where we really tried step by step to figure out how do we help people when they sign up for Twitter to get more engaged, to start using the network in a meaningful way, to build a daily habit for how they want to use Twitter. And over time, I think the phenomenon is growing. I think there's still plenty of people who don't get Twitter, but they've announced numbers that are much, much higher than kind of the early days. So I think we're just starting to see Twitter really come to fruition. And this week there was a real seminal moment around the NFL that tons of people were tweeting about their reaction to the NFL replacement refs. And if you're watching this video a long time in the future, this may no longer be relevant, but that was, again, another seminal moment where the public conversation on Twitter has just become such a phenomenon.
Right, it's very commonplace now.
Yeah.
So why the change to investing? You've been a product guy for so long.
Yeah.
Why'd you jump over?
Yeah, so a lot of people ask me that, and when I look back at my career and I think about investing, I think they're actually very similar. The goal of investing is find great companies that you think can be fundamental, iconic behaviors, companies, brands in the future. Get involved with them early, do things both financially to give the company money, but also time and energy and resources and connections to help the company really get to that scale. If I look at my career, I've been really lucky multiple times to find a company in the early days that I thought could really be one of those long-term interesting companies and be involved. And thought maybe investing is actually a way to take some of those lessons. And instead of going to find one more company to do it, and then maybe one more company and one more company with my own ADD or other things going on, from an investing, actually have a platform where you get to do multiple at once and you have a little bit more leverage to do the same thing. But my main objective is still the same. Find things that can become really important big companies in the future and be a part of helping them grow.
How do you find these new things? Like, is it the team or do you look at the idea?
So it's a great question. And the answer is always all of the above,
right,
and many more. I think there's 3 or 4 key things that you look for when you're looking for an opportunity. The first is a vision for this future that you think you can create and build a profitable company around. And sort of at Facebook, it was, we think we can connect everybody in the world and they'll share things, and all of a sudden it's going to become more connected and they'll be using this to communicate and interact every day. And if we do that, we'll be able to monetize in a variety of ways. At LinkedIn, it was, we think we can connect all these professionals to open them up to all these new opportunities. And if we do so, there will be some sets of people who will pay for it. In the case of LinkedIn, it's sales and recruiting and a few other business lines. And so you look for somebody who kind of has this vision of what a future can look like. And then you look for, do they have the team and the capabilities to go and do it? Do they have some unique insights that really help them along the way? And it doesn't necessarily matter what they've done in the past, as much as all the things they've done in the past set them up to have really unique insights along how they're going to go make that future. And you look for some wedge where they say, hey, this future seems really great way out here, but the only way I'm going to get there is if I get to this little proof point first. And if I can get to this proof point, it makes me more confident I'm going to get closer to that future. And then I'll get to this proof point. And so we really look for people who both have that vision, but understand the tactical step-by-step way that they just want to keep proving it to themselves more and more that they can get to their big idea.
So as an investor, do founders have to have revolutionary ideas, or is it the execution of a normal idea that gets to the next big thing?
You know, it's a tricky question to answer because it's not revolutionary or evolutionary. It's always a combination. I don't think anybody looked at the first day of Twitter and said, that's a revolutionary idea. It felt like a toy. It felt like the silly little thing that you can send messages back and forth. But I think what the best founders do have is a deep understanding of behavior and a way, or on the consumer side, a deep understanding of behavior and a way in which that behavior will manifest more and more through the way that people will start acting differently and communicate differently or think differently in the world. And it's often these simplest little gestures and these simplest little ways in which people will communicate a little bit differently or do things with a slightly different nuance that end up cascading into these really phenomenal, revolutionary changes. It's not robots are going to be the future and I'm going to go invent the future of robots, but it's, hey, what if we had our networks together so that if I need to figure out who you know, I can search for it instead of having to ask you. It's a pretty simple idea.
Right.
It turns out to be revolutionary in the form of LinkedIn.
Okay, so now as an investor, what do you look for that you think other investors may miss?
You know, I think one of the things that I've gotten to see and experience from the products I've worked on, and I think some of my instincts that led me joining those companies, is understanding that wedge and that path to get from this simple gesture, these simple ideas, to this big revolutionary kind of changing behavior. I think understanding how to both create those step-by-step approaches and how to look at data and read the data to kind of give you some signal on what's working and what not are 2 things that I've built kind of a lot of experience and sort of instinct around. And so when I'm meeting founders and drill into details on those, you know, I hope that I can see some of those same instincts and insights reflected back from the founder, because it's not that I can join a company and help them through all of that. We're really looking for the founders to kind of have those insights to guide a whole company around it.
Right. Now, so you've been a product guy in the past.
Yeah.
You've mentioned all the places you've worked at. So 2 questions with that. Do you think founders should be able to code? So, well, let's tackle that question first. Do you think founders should be able to code?
I don't think the answer is yes, that a founder needs to code, needs to write the product, needs to be the best writer of their product in order to succeed. But I think the founder needs to have a fundamental understanding and respect and partnership around what it takes to build technology to actually be successful at all. So I think there's plenty of people who have founded companies. Reed didn't write any of the code for LinkedIn, for example, but Reed was very clearly somebody who deeply understood the art of software development and the process of making software. And when was given questions and challenges around how the database needs to work or the node graph needs to work, was deeply involved in those conversations. I personally haven't written code in 8 or 9 years now on a daily active basis, but I still, having done that prior in my career, have been able to work with great engineers to build really successful products because I'm able to have that real exchange and respect for what they do.
Right, and an understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, so secondly, do you take that product, what kind of role do you take with companies and startups and founders that you worked with? Yeah. Does your product experience translate into a direct mentor role?
Yeah, so look, as investors, the first thing we fully understand is that the company is the founder's company.
Right.
And they're building this product and this company to their vision, and we're backing them to do that. We're getting involved to do that. I think having gotten to work at these companies, I can understand the difference of saying, here's what you should do, or here's what I think you need to do, versus I can tell stories and frame conversations in the ways that we had to face similar problems and how we got to similar conclusions. So I think a lot of what I try to do is give them context and help them through frameworks for their decisions and push the founders on decisions that they're making and why, and give them suggestions, but fully expecting them to really take the onus of making and driving those key decisions. And by offering that up, I think that's experience that they can tap anytime. And you try to be there when they're wanting to chat at 11 p.m. or needing a full day deep dive on metrics and growth, kind of whatever they would need.
Okay. Now, how do you think entrepreneurs should deal with failure? So, well, first, when you meet a founder for the first time and they're pitching an idea to you, do you see past failures as, battle scars that they've learned lessons from, or is it, they don't have a proven track record because of that? How do you view it?
That's a really good question. I don't think failure is battle scars. I don't think failure is no proven record either. I think the key is, how do you, for this opportunity that you're facing now, put all the things you've done in context to help you know why this is the inevitable idea and why you think you're going to be able to make this company and this idea work right now. I think when a lot of people say, oh, my idea was great, but the timing was wrong, I think that's an excuse. Because I think you weren't looking at the time and the way the world worked today and building things to create the wedges in the step-by-step path to get you through that. And I mean, anybody who had any brilliant idea pre or post, it's all about, can you harness the things that are going on right now to make something that become much bigger?
Right.
I think the people who have really healthy reflections on that and the people who continue to approach everything in the best way possible and understand when to pull the plug because they say, hey, my assumptions are starting to fail here. I'm not actually proving what I thought I could prove. I think it is time to go in a different direction. I think it's a really healthy, very, very positive learning process.
Okay. Now, how should someone approach an investor or VC? No. You can either use your experience or just give a general, how do I find someone?
I think the first thing is to know which kind of investors you're approaching for which stage of your idea that you're at. Because I think every investor, just like every company has a business model, every investor has a business model. And larger venture capital funds' business model is to back products that are growing and with traction and to help them become these really long-term sustainable companies. Early stage and seed investors often like to help guys with an idea get their first product out the door to see if it can actually test some of the assumptions of their idea to see if it can work. And there's different interplay in kind of the stage and the level and the amount of investment for all of those things. So the first is understand what stage you're at and what type of investor you want to do. The second thing is the best way to get introduced to an investor is always to get a referred and trusted introduction. And that's never super easy to figure out, but it's starting with your network and saying, which friends do you know that know this investor? If you're new to a community with investors and you don't know anybody, there are programs that these accelerator programs can do great jobs of helping you to join a new community, get into a network, start meeting a lot of other entrepreneurs, start figuring out which investors they know. And there's always try to find any common ground with an investor that you can. When I first approached LinkedIn, I actually didn't know any of the people at LinkedIn, but I had done the same program at Stanford as Reid Hoffman had done. So I sent a cold note saying, I've just moved back to the Bay Area from 6 years in Seattle, and I would love to meet you and talk about what you're doing with LinkedIn. I think it's the future. And I did the same program with you a few years later at Stanford. And something I put in the note at least made it blink and say, okay, there's a little bit of common ground here. I like people who did the same program. Maybe I'll meet this guy.
Right. Okay. Now, do you think VC funding is always necessary? Well, first, before that, going back to the previous question, once a founder finds you, what's the best way to get their idea across? Do you still believe in using like business models and an executive summary and a business plan and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think I talked about at the beginning that the biggest way to get this across is you have to be able to tell a great story. You have to be able to tell a story of why right now the timing in the world is set up for you and this team to go build this company that's going to create this kind of change in the world. And that's for a venture-backed, multi-billion-dollar company that you want to go create out of this thing. You have to be able to tell a story. So there are many ways to tell a story. You can tell a story in a one-page document. You can tell a story in a 30-second video. You can tell a story in a slide deck. I often see a slide deck as one of the great ways to frame a story. For people who are really good at it, you can frame a really good story. And the other thing is, the more you've already built and the more product you have for people to play with and understand the key gestures and the things that you're basing your assumptions on is really, really good, especially for the stage that Greylock is at. I tend to look for people who have products that already exist that I can play with.
Okay, now, so moving on, do you think VC funding is always necessary? Should companies, there's some people who start and work on an idea with the explicit goal of getting funding and then exiting. Do you think funding is always necessary?
So I think funding is a great tool, and venture capital and the kind of people who do venture capital are great partners to help early stage people build companies that can become potentially these sustainable, multi-billion-dollar iconic companies and brands. And things like Airbnb and Dropbox and Tumblr and LinkedIn and Facebook and the kinds of stuff that Greylock's gotten involved with, particularly those are all consumer companies. We also have a huge set of companies on the enterprise side that we're involved with, like Workday and Palo Alto Networks. And if you're trying to build a company like that to cause this change in the world, venture capital can be an amazing tool. But it's not the right tool for everybody. It's not the right tool for every business. There are many phenomenal businesses that aren't going to become multi-$100 million or billion-dollar revenue companies and go public on the stock exchange, even in their wildest dreams of what they could possibly be, that are still great companies. But those companies, venture capital might not be the right tool for them because it might set you up with different expectations. Because venture capitalists back companies that they believe have potential to become one of those.
Okay, and to wrap it up, what advice do you have to future entrepreneurs out there?
The best advice is find something that you're really passionate about. Not that you think is an objective, potential way to make money, but that you're really passionate about wanting to see in the world. And you really believe if you can make that thing happen in the world, a lot of other people will be excited about it and will want to use your products, want to either pay you for your products or advertisers will pay you because your product is getting so much usage. But just really find something that you want to see in the world and go make that thing happen in the world. If you try to be too rational and objective and, well, I think there's a hole here and I can go fill it, but I'm not that passionate about it, you're actually not as likely to succeed because you're not going to go to bed at night and wake up every morning thinking about it.
Well, I think that's all we have for today, Josh. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Great.